Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers.
And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 16, Episode 70. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Monday, Steelers Nation. And Dave, it was a worst-case scenario for the Pittsburgh Steelers this weekend. The Baltimore Ravens defeated the Green Bay Packers on Saturday night, which meant Pittsburgh had to take care of business on Sunday. They failed to do so, losing 13-6 to the Cleveland Browns, making for a winner-take-all Sunday night matchup in Week 18 between the Pittsburgh Steelers and Baltimore Ravens. So Pittsburgh squanders a great opportunity to clinch the division, to rest starters in Week 18, to host a playoff game. Hosting a playoff game still obviously on the table, but now the route goes to beating Baltimore, or tying Baltimore, I suppose, on Sunday night. So Dave, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm not doing all that well. The worst case scenario did transpire for this team over the weekend there, and obviously started a Saturday night, but still you thought, okay, go into Cleveland, take care of business, get a win or a tie, and you can break out the hats and the T-shirts. And yeah, those stay in the box right now and have a potential now of staying in the box for all of eternity until they get shipped over to people that could use the shirts, I guess, overseas. But I tell you, I don't get too high or too low really during Steelers games at this point. You try to have your objective hat on and kind of mix it with the fan hat. But I found myself in the fourth quarter of that game, really more the fan side coming out and really getting aggravated, worked up, those kind of things there, because this was a very winnable game. Heck, for as bad as they had played, they still were able to move the ball down to the 10-yard line and have 4 shots starting at the 10 to at least get the game sent into overtime. For all we know, maybe Mike Tomlin would have went for 2, but a tie would have been just as beneficial as a win. So, I mean, that's a story for another day. Unfortunately, we'll never know the answer to whether or not they would have kicked the extra point or went for 2 in that situation. But yeah, the loss of DK Metcalf was super apparent in this game. The defense, had a rough start there, but they settled down, played really well in the second half, I thought. And the offense they did not have playmakers. They could not hit the football, push the football down the field with any regularity. They were awful on third downs. But look, I mean, if you would have told me, if I missed a game and I woke up this morning, you said, Dave, the Steelers won the battle against Cleveland 2-0. They did not. Cleveland only scored 13 points. Then I would have said, "Oh, okay. Well, the Steelers won. It must have been probably a low-scoring game." But obviously not the case. And yeah, gloom, despair, and agony on all of us here at this point. And the Steelers, they get what they get at this point. They go into their regular season finale on a game that's on the national stage against a Ravens team that rediscovered Derrick Henry, and they are now 3.5-point home underdogs to the Ravens in a loser leave town match.
And of course, Pittsburgh will not have DK Metcalf for the season finale, still serving his suspension. We'll see if Lamar Jackson plays for Baltimore, if TJ Watt plays for Pittsburgh. Both things are up in the air right now. You gave a pretty good 30,000-foot view of how this loss happened, so I'll just chime in with my thoughts. And you're right, on paper, should be a Steelers win. Won the turnover battle 2-0. You held Cleveland to 3 points after the first quarter, and that only came via that turnover on downs Pittsburgh had late in the game. You should have won this game, even knowing that Cleveland has a solid defense. You allow only 13 points. You expect your offense to muster with or without Metcalf at least 14 points, and Pittsburgh just frankly could not pass the ball. There was no semblance of a passing game. They could not shake the man coverage of Cleveland. The Browns getting back Denzel Ward was huge. The combination of him and Tyson Campbell completely locked down Pittsburgh's receivers, and the attention given to Myles Garrett to minimize his impact, which Pittsburgh, to their credit, did, hampered that passing game all the more. Some will say that Pittsburgh spent more time focused on Garrett not getting the sack and by extension the sack record, and that cost them the win. I think it's a lazy narrative that I entirely disagree with. Pittsburgh's game plan against Garrett was very similar to what it was in Week 6 in past games in past years against Cleveland. It's a guy that you don't want to take over. Of course, you start your game plan around how do we solve Myles Garrett the way the teams start their game plans with how do you solve TJ Watt. So I think it's not accurate to say that Pittsburgh sacrificed the chance to win to stop Garrett from getting the sack record, but the energy expended in trying to slow down Garrett certainly hampered a passing game, which already came in hampered without DK Metcalf. You lose Darnell Washington in the first half of this one, and just simply you could not throw the ball at all against Cleveland.
Yeah, and as far as the Garrett thing, I mean, look, you're right. And Mike Tomlin laid it out. He lays that out every time they face a team like Cleveland or a team that has a supreme pass rusher. You try to take that guy away. He was asked about, will Dylan Cook get help? He says, heck yeah. Even the 49ers gave Trent Williams help in that game against them. And it wasn't just obviously Myles Garrett lining up on one side. He lined up all over the place, and wherever he went, they did their best to chip and put guys, extra guys on him to give the tackles help. And in some instances when he moved it, when Garrett would line up inside more of a defensive tackle, Aaron Rodgers changed, the protection a lot of times within there. So yeah, that is a lazy narrative. And look, it gets put out there by guys like former Browns tackle Joe Thomas, obviously Myles Garrett, said what he said after the game. Yeah, I think that's sour grapes because he wasn't able to get the sack record in this, but they were them giving Myles Garrett the attention that they gave him is not breaking news. And on top of it, Aaron Rodgers getting the football out quickly, low snap to throw time is also not breaking news. We've talked about him doing that all season. Heck, his snap to throw time against Cleveland, according to Next Gen Stats, was 2.39 seconds. That's the people will probably say that had to be the quickest on the season. No, it wasn't. There were 3 other games that he had a quicker snap to throw time. Here's something interesting. I'm looking at the week by week snap to throw times for Aaron Rodgers on Next Gen Stats. In games that Aaron Rodgers has had a 2.46 or lower snap to throw time, the Steelers went into this game 6-0 in such games. This is the one game this season when Aaron Rodgers did not have a snap to throw time or did have a snap to throw time under 2.46 seconds that they wound up losing. So this, it's easy for fans to buy into all this because that started to be the narrative about halfway through the game yesterday, and then you have some of the national guys tagging on to this, and once again, Joe Thomas and Myles Garrett, they're going to say what they're going to say, but you have to. The game is, the goal was to not let Myles Garrett wreck your game from what he can do, getting to the quarterback, not only sacking the quarterback, but getting the football out. And they effectively did that. But the problem is they just did not have the talent in the passing game in one-on-one situations. Browns were on. They did what they do. They played a single high. They play a lot of man, and the Steelers just were not winning in those situations. And to compound matters, the Steelers couldn't convert third downs worth a damn. They couldn't convert fourth downs worth a damn. And up until late in the game, where Cleveland was just trying not to give up the big play, they finally moved the football down the field with a couple of plays. But then they get down in the low red zone there at the 10, and they had no game plan whatsoever, and they didn't have the talent to win 1-on-1 in those situations. And that's why you have 4 plays starting at the 10 with 3 of them at the 7, and it just backyard football at that point, and the more talented team in the eligibles versus their defenders won.
Yeah, last week it ended in a goal line sequence where Pittsburgh's defense rose up and got a big stop against Detroit, and this week it ends in an offensive sequence for Pittsburgh that failed, which goes back to 7 shots in a very similar situation, and there just weren't any great play calls there, and guys not on the same page, and just not winning your one-on-one. Just needed one guy to make a play, and nobody did, and that kind of sums up how this loss came to be. But Dave, let's get into the housekeeping portion before we dive back into what went wrong and what lies ahead for the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, it is presented by our friends at touringplans.com. If you're planning a trip to Disney, it felt a little like Disney yesterday in Pittsburgh, not for the Steelers aspect of it all, but it got pretty warm and got into the low 60s yesterday. It's now in the 30s again. It's very typical Pittsburgh weather. But if you're planning a trip to Disney to get away from now the cold that's back in Pittsburgh, go check out our friends at touringplan.com for any trips to Disneyland, Disney World, Disney Cruise Lines. Let Touring Plans be your co-pilot to plan your trip and make it the most no-sweat experience of your lifetime. For restaurant reviews, for how to save money on tickets, for when lines are going to be the shortest at the parks, you can check out Touring Plans. A ton of great information. They are the experts when it comes to planning your trip to any of those Disney attractions and excursions. So be sure to tell them that Steelers Depot sent you and check out the site and the app, touringplans.com. All right, Dave, let's get back into this game and let's kind of do the housekeeping portion of it. Pittsburgh elevating a pair of players on Saturday, an offensive lineman, Jack Driscoll, and cornerback Deshaun Jameson has some extra depth there. Neither played on their respective side of the ball. I think Jameson picked up a couple of special team snaps in this one with Brandon Echols out, and Pittsburgh looking for some gunner help on the punt coverage team. From an injury standpoint, before the game, TJ Watt did not play. Calvin Austin, Brandon Echols, Isaac Seumalo all sat out. Jalen Ramsey with this illness did suit up in this one and played all but 2 snaps against Cleveland. One certainly significant in-game injury Pittsburgh suffered was Darnell Washington. I think it was on a catch about first half or so. Apparently, according to Mike Tomlin, broke his arm. And so we don't know for sure his status for Sunday, but I think it's very much safe to assume he's not going to play in this game. So that is a massive loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers offense, Dave.
Yeah, if he does wind up playing, you'd have to think it's casted up pretty good, and the effectiveness of basically being one-armed at that point, he might have a shot of he's not going to be Darnell Washington, especially in the passing game. Well, either aspect of it, passing game or blocking game, you would have to think if he does play. To his credit, he tried to stay in the game once he sustained that injury. In fact, I think either a play or two after sustaining that injury, they ran the cute new wrinkle off the tush push, and he got a good block on the edge there to help free Connor Hayward. And I think he tried to even get in on one of the field goal attempts there after that as well too. And was you could tell he was really hurt there. And once he went out of the game, you lost obviously your best end of the line blocker in that situation. You lost a guy that had been used throughout the season in the passing game and the yards after the catch and everything that he brings. So that's we'll see whether or not he's able to play. I'll be surprised if he does, but if he does play, you're not going to get the same quality of Darnell Washington there. And I believe it was a left wrist or left forearm. I think the team called it I think Mike Thomas said a broken arms, but regardless, he's injured now, and that's why you talk about a team that's down DK Metcalf, and we'll see what happens with Calvin Austin and that hamstring. One of your top skill players technically on offense. You're not going to have him. You're definitely not going to have DK Metcalf in the finale. And then once again, we'll see what happens with Calvin Austin. But it's not like Calvin Austin been lighting up things throughout the last 7 games that he's played either. I think I went back through last night and calculated that in the last 7 games that Calvin Austin has played in, he has something like 9 catches for 90 yards and no touchdowns, and played well over 200 offensive snaps. So brutal guy to lose, definitely on offense here. And yeah, As far as the inactives go, Will Howard, as expected, the number 3 emergency quarterback, and then Caleb Johnson. You kind of did the math there and kind of expected him to be a healthy scratch once again for a second game in a row. And that's what wound up being the case there. Logan Lee dressed in essentially got the extra helmet, but most of the guys obviously on the inactive list were guys that have been ruled out with injuries.
And Ian Rappaport noting that Washington out for the, quote, foreseeable future, maybe in some sort of far-fetched Super Bowl run, Washington could return. But obvious enough, given the nature of the injury, a broken arm, tells you he's not going to be back for the Ravens game. Mike Tomlin will offer an update on the overall health of the team, on TJ Watt in particular, Isaac Seumalo, and others during his Tuesday press conference. All right, Dave, let's go back into this game. Pittsburgh falling 13-6. The defense off to a tough start, bad first quarter, played really well the rest of the way. Pittsburgh had the ball 5 separate times in the fourth quarter, either by the drive extending it into the fourth quarter or starting the drive in the fourth quarter, and they could not produce a single point in this one. Drove down to the 8-yard line by game's end, and then 3 straight incompletions in the end zone, all to Marquez Valdes-Scantling, all against Pro Bowl cornerback Denzel Ward. Let's start with that end sequence there. What were your thoughts on Rodgers repeatedly targeting MVS against Ward on those final 3 plays?
Well, first it felt kind of predetermined that was the guy that that they were intent on trying to get the football down in that situation. They went 2 by 2, just different forms of personnel groupings, but mostly with I think MVS obviously on that right side there. And I mean, you just got Cleveland played man all the time down there, and it was just they didn't have anybody winning. You had MVS and Aaron Rodgers not on the same page on felt like 2 of those. One maybe a bad route. Aaron Rodgers expecting MVS to make a different cut than he did on the other one. And then, man, you get into you're telling me you get into a 4th down situation with the game on the line from the 7-yard line. Your best option is really throw a fade jump ball to MVS at that point. I mean, I guess, and I know I did, and a lot of people will point out Kenneth Gainwell coming open underneath. I mean, that's all fine and good, but the ball, Aaron Rodgers had already made his decision on that final play, and then there's no guarantee anyway where the middle, they made sure to keep the middle of the field closed in that situation with defenders there. It would have probably taken a Herculean effort had the ball gone to Gainwell underneath for him to get in the end zone. What was it, a better shot maybe for Aaron to hold on and maybe try to take it was just there was nothing there. Guys weren't winning off the line, and you're really set up in a backyard football type situation of let's see if our skill guys can beat their skill guys, and they were outmatched in that situation. Heck, I mean, you get into Roman Wilson only played 9 snaps in this game overall. Obviously, Ben Skoranek played 0 offensive snaps, so that left your top three wide receivers, Adam Thielen, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, and Scotty Miller, basically cast-offs, older cast-offs at this point and stage. So you get into an in-game situation like that, at the very least, you got to credit them for at least getting themselves, I guess, in a situation, but really no game plan whatsoever. Mike Tomlin, a week ago prided himself, 7 shots, that's why we prepare in these situations and do all that work starting in training camp for situations such as that. That was obviously on the defensive side of football. Well, they failed miserably when it came to situational football in the low red zone and 7-shot type situations in this one. So they didn't have a good enough plan down there for those final 4 plays, and obviously they did not have enough skill or talented enough players to win in those situations.
Well said, and I agree. You got to have your best calls in those moments, and it felt like Pittsburgh did not have a call that they really liked because you knew you were getting man coverage. That's Cleveland's personality in general. It's how they were winning all game. It's how they're gonna go down swinging with their best shot, which is manning up with Ward and his return and Campbell. And what a difference when Pittsburgh played against Campbell in that Week 6 game. He had just been acquired over from Jacksonville, that's just trying to catch that moving train and took us lumps against DK Metcalf, but is really settling into his own. And it's a really good secondary with Delpit and others, and Pittsburgh simply did not have the guys. But what's most frustrating of all is what you said. You didn't even give yourself a chance on two of those plays. You had two
Right.
miscommunications, two MVS, and those are guys you would expect to be on the same page, just given their history. And of course, MVS has been in Pittsburgh for, I don't know, what is it now, 6+ weeks. And so it's not like he's brand new trying to catch this moving train to the offense. And for whatever reason, you just didn't get those guys to be on the same page. The one where MVS broke his route out, Rodgers wanted him to come back inside. The third down play where I think he wanted more of a front shoulder throw and MVS to stem inside and cross towards face, and MVS kind of ran it like it was going to be a fade play. Then, of course, you had the fourth down fade, which was a PI. I think it was pretty clean. I'm not too upset about the no call there. Of course, you're dying to get it if you're Pittsburgh, but I think you let that thing just play out, and I have no issue with the refs not throwing the flag on that play. But you had basically two wasted plays, or just the ball being dirted by miscommunication and guys not being on the same page, and that's really frustrating. And of course, on that fourth down play, you do see Kenneth Gainwell sort of leak out after chipping Myles Garrett, and you just wonder in hindsight, which I know is always a benefit, if Rodgers had just looked back to his left and come off MBS, do you throw that to Gainwell? Does he get in? I think he does. I know it's easy to go back and say throw it to the open guy, but the principle of throwing to MBS 3 straight times against Ward is not a matchup that's really attractive to me.
Yeah, and look, once again, the ball's out before he already made the decision at that point. So, it just felt like Aaron was determined to get the ball to MVS in those final 3 plays. Just plain and simple. He thought that maybe MVS, and look, these two guys know each other, obviously going back to the time in Green Bay and that, but you're basically trying to take your 4. You're trying to win one-on-one situations with no rubs or no nothing, and your guys just weren't as talented as their guys were, or the scheme that they're running, and there was obviously no real creativity. It was like someone go out and make a play one-on-one, and they obviously couldn't do it.
And I've talked about for a while now, and will continue to repeat myself this offseason, is Pittsburgh needs a route runner at receiver. They've not had that guy since Deontay Johnson, and then AB before him. They need that Lad McConkey type who can beat man coverage. May not be the biggest guy, may not be the fastest guy, but a really solid, nuanced, smart route runner who can get open one-on-one, because the scheme, frankly, just is not super creative in the traditional drop-back passing game. So they're going to need some guys who can win their one-on-ones, especially whenever DK Metcalf is on the field and draws attention and, safety up over the top and creates his one-on-one opportunities elsewhere. Pittsburgh just does not have that guy right now. And maybe they have something in that in Roman Wilson, but 9 snaps. And I don't want to harp on it. I don't want to pretend like it's the number one issue for this passing game, but Mike Tomlin, from his literal Tuesday press conference, touted this is a big opportunity for Roman Wilson. We're excited about Roman Wilson. He talked about it throughout the week. He talked about it to Bob Labriola. He talked about it to Tracy Wolfson before the game. And yet Wilson only gets 9 snaps and 0 targets in a game where you're throwing the ball and dropping back 40+ times. I know that Tomlin does not control the receiver rotation. That's usually handled by the positional coaches, in this case, wide receivers coach Zach Azzani. But I don't understand how Wilson gets touted so much and barely plays and does not see the ball once in an afternoon where your receivers were just simply not making any other kind of plays.
Yeah, look, obviously Tomlin could have went throughout during the game and said, let's get him involved in this, but there's obviously they don't trust him. Aaron probably doesn't trust him at this point. Aaron probably wants his guys out there, and Scotty Miller, MVS, and Adam Thielen, because he probably thinks that he trusts them more. But 9 snaps is 9 snaps, and we went into this knowing Ben Skoranek would be lucky to play any offensive snaps with that hand of his, and if he did, they would probably be running plays at that. But here we are in week 17 and now week 18 talking about this team's wide receiver depth and quality of wide receivers once again. And right now it is MVS, Adam Thielen, and Scotty Miller. And that's just not good enough. And Aaron, I mean, look, the other narrative of this is obviously, well, if they would have had DK Metcalf, they probably would have won this game. Well, you back up from the end of the game situation and all, and how would that have changed the course of the rest of the mid game, if you will? Aaron Rodgers was still with what he had out there. Their inability to push the football down the field was obviously apparent in this one. And then when we've seen games where they've been unable to push the football down the field, at least in games that they won, they've been able to have the yards after the catch. Well, their adjusted net yards after the catch, I think, was something like 72 yards on, what was it, 21, 22 completions, which is obviously under 4 yards of adjusted yak. And then as far as pushing the football down the field, Aaron Rodgers and we said, look, because of them playing, because of Cleveland expected to play a lot of middle of the field close, because we expect them to play a lot of man, there were going to be occasional times where they could not turn shots, where they were going to have opportunities to push the football more than 15 air yards down the field. Well, they did try it, and they were very unsuccessful at it. Aaron Rodgers was 1 of 5 on pass attempts that had more than 15 air yards past the line of scrimmage. The lone completion was the middle of the field to Pat Freiermuth in a situation where they were hurrying up to catch the Browns with 12 guys on the field. And then Aaron Rodgers, if you want to talk about a mid-game passing situation of beyond 10 yards but under 16 yards, Aaron Rodgers was 2 of 5 pass attempts between 11 and 15 yards past the line of scrimmage, and I believe 2 of those came during the final drive.
Yeah, it felt like Rodgers certainly wanted to take some shots in this one, whether you talk about that 4th and goal kind of just jump ball to MVS, or Josh Carney just posted on Twitter that 4th and 1 deep shot to Scotty Miller, and that was, overthrown and incomplete. And, I don't love the call in general to go empty there, 4th down, but it's not like the actual play call is to throw it deep to Scotty. Rodgers is reading coverage. He's taking what the matchup he likes, whatever he thinks is most beneficial in that moment. He's got one-on-one Miller and Campbell, but you see the rub route underneath by Thielen that's open, and it works really well. One of the good concepts of the day that Arthur Smith called, and Rodgers passes it up to throw this, vertical throw to Scotty Miller, and it just, you got to know the situation there and say, do you want to take that home run shot for the touchdown? Do you want to move the chains here and live the fight another down? And it just kind of felt like Rodgers was locking on to some of those one-on-one matchups and trusting his guy to make a play, and there's certainly some value in that, but it just probably wasn't the game for it, given the defense you were facing, given how hamstrung you were offensively with your lack of weapons. And so I just don't know, Rodgers' mindset to kind of throw some of these low percentage, all right, man, go up, make a play, and just simply receivers were not making those plays.
Yeah, and that play, particularly on the 4th and 1, once again, it looked like it was predetermined snap, get the ball out, up, over the top, and let, of all people, Scotty Miller try to deliver you a surprise, 4th and 1 deep ball. And Adam Thielen is open underneath, but I mean, Aaron never even considered that the ball's out. And to
Right.
make matters worse on it, sure, Scotty Miller did not fully stack his guy on the outside over there, but you look at where that ball landed. Even if he had completely stacked the corner on that side, that's almost a near impossible catch from where that ball landed. For Scotty Miller to make in that situation there. So, and then once again, you have to, you would have to think as think about the totality of the game. Your defense, you have to think that you're going to hopefully be able to keep the score down in this when you're playing a rookie quarterback in Shadur Sanders. You're talking about a 4th and 1 situation. It's not going to be who can get to 50 or 38 or 35 points first in this one to win it. You got to know the situation there, and merely moving the chains in a 4th and 1 situation, you got to go a lot more high percentage in that. I mean, you make the decision right off the top for Scotty Miller to win outside up over the top on a deep ball against man coverage just isn't good process.
Yeah, and against a good corner, too, in Tyson Campbell, who's got a lot of size. I know if those plays work and they hit, we celebrate them, and they say, man, what a great play, what a great, aggressive, calculated decision by Rodgers. So I know there's always a benefit of hindsight, again, that goes back into how we view these calls, the lens in which we perceive and talk about these outcomes. But it wasn't just one play, it was repeated, and you talk about the process, and it's the process of throwing to Miller one-on-one against Campbell, the right idea in that moment. If you told me that pre-snap, that's where that ball was going to go, I'd say, what else is available? And there was something else more available, and Thielen being open on that little pick play on that trip side. So, yeah, I think it's certainly fair to question the thought process. But, again, this is everyone. This is Rodgers with some bad decisions, probably some forced throws, some predetermined reads, and receivers not making the plays, back shoulder throw to Adam Thielen on the third down earlier in the game. He can't haul it in. A lot of sloppy play, Kenneth Gainwell dropping a screen, Valdez Scantling not coming down with some contested catches. He had 3 fumbles in this game that fortunately he somehow recovered them all, one of which popped into Jonnu Smith's hands on kind of a wacky play off a safety blitz by Delpit. So it just was a really sloppy game overall, and Pittsburgh just could not get into a rhythm. You're 3 of 18 on possession downs. It's about as bad as it gets. You're 3 of 15 on third down, 0 of 3 on fourth down. That's hard to be that bad on those possession downs, and just really could not get any sort of drives going.
Yeah, then you think back to a couple of the third downs running on 3rd and 4 or 3rd and 5, one of those ones, you don't. Yeah, you got to do better than that. I mean, I'm always okay on running on 3rd and 4 if your intention is to also go for it on 4th down. But obviously, they didn't in that situation there either. And we talk about turnovers. Yeah, technically, the Steelers did not turn the ball over. They tried, as you mentioned. I mean, to think how bad the offense was, and to think how much even worse it could have been had they lost any of those turnovers. Fortunately, they didn't. But then you go 0 for 2 on 4th down, and that's as good as a turnover. And they did have 2 takeaways on the defensive side of football, and they could do nothing with those. And then you think back to that one, 3-play sequence after they had moved the ball down a little bit down the field and did nothing but go backwards at that point, and that ended up costing them some points in that situation. So it was just a pitiful game by the Steelers offense, and it got compounded the further you got along to it. Once obviously you lose Darnell Washington, and once again you had no answer for pushing the football down the field successfully. You weren't getting yards after the catch and the completions that you were getting them, and then you were what you were on 3rd and 4th down. All of those are recipes for being in a real tight game that you ultimately lose.
And for my choice this week of the forgotten play that helped Cleveland beat Pittsburgh, I went with a pretty obscure one. I went with a 3rd and 1, about 10 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. Pittsburgh at the Browns 42, trailing 10-6. See Rodgers make a pretty big check at the line, and Dylan Cook is called for a false start. It's close, it's tight. He moves just a half second before the ball is snapped, but they call it. And what I think would have been a first down run by Kenneth Gainwell turns into 3rd and 6, which turns into an incompletion to Pat Frymuth, which turns into a punt. And you wonder what would have happened there had that false start not taken place. So critical mistake there on a possession down, 3rd and short. About the only place where Pittsburgh was converting was 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2. You had the really nice push option call by Connor Hayward for 29, which was a really good variation. Pittsburgh's doing some fun stuff off of the push this year. But yeah, really bad on those possession downs. How did you feel about Pittsburgh's running game in this one? Did they run it enough? Was it effective enough? What were your thoughts on the ground game?
Well, I mean, I think other than running in some situations where I thought they should pass on 3rd and 4 or 5 situations there. I mean, you look, you had Jaylen Warren, outside of his early fumble, which was fortunately recovered. He was still able to register 5.3 yards per pop. Kenneth Gainwell 3.7. The 2 that or 1 that I guess Connor Hayward had. Two in total. What one of the Connor Haywards, the one that popped loose from Rodgers? Who
Jonnu
got?
Smith caught the one that
Oh, he
popped
did.
out of Rodgers' hands. Yeah, I don't know the other Hayward carry. I can check it here real quick
I'm
for
trying
you.
to remember the other Hayward carry, but you obviously the long one, 29 yards on the rim. We said, look, there was a potential of having a nice wrinkle off of that. That was good to see. It was what their longest. I think it was along with Pat Farmer. Both of them had 29-yard gains. Their two longest plays of the game. There, you had Johnny Smith 9 yards on two technically, and then you had an Aaron Rodgers scramble for 6. I mean, the biggest thing I think overall component to this game that what we had been seeing in the past several was, unable to get the ball to Kenneth Gainwell enough in the passing game. We talked a lot
Mhm.
about how Kenneth Gainwell's really, I mean, he's been good on the ground, obviously running the football, but I mean, he only had 4 targets in this game, 3 receptions for 12 yards. That, based on the eligibles that you have in this game and how you rotated them in and weren't using Roman Wilson, it felt like you could have done the biggest aspect lacking. It felt in this game, other than obviously not being able to push the football down the field, was probably not getting the football in Kenneth Gainwell's hands out in space enough.
Yeah, I agree. Now, I know that he spent a lot of the game chipping Myles Garrett, went empty center a lot there, but could you done some more variations? I thought the screen attempt to Gainwell was a smart play to, kind of fake the chip to Garrett and then throw the screen behind. I don't know if Garrett's presence kind of obscured Gainwell's vision on the football that contributed to the drop there, but, could you have done a couple more quick game type things with Gainwell, escort swings, angle routes? I think you had an opportunity there to get Gainwell the football more. You had Schlesinger for the Browns really playing on one leg in this game with that bruise. I can't believe he stayed in. Really tough guy, but I mean, he couldn't run at large parts of this game. So I think there was opportunities there to get him isolated. Pittsburgh did not. By the way, the other Connor Hayward carry was a bit of a weird one. It was an actual pass from Aaron Rodgers under that pressure. It was backwards, went down as a lateral. So
Oh,
it was a
okay,
pass
that's right.
play, but it gets scored as a rushing attempt for a loss of 3 yards late in the first half of that one. So just to kind of clarify, put a bow on that situation. So yeah, I think the back still could have been used more. The run game commitment was okay, but I think it needed to be more in a day where you were running fairly effectively, where your pass game was giving you nothing. I think there were some stretches and sequences in which they kind of got away from the run game. I know that there were moments where Rodgers was checking in the runs, so some of the third down runs that frustrated fans, I think, were checks by Rodgers, just based on the coverage that he saw. If he was seeing blitz, he was going to try to run into those things. So, I don't know if those were the best decisions or not. They probably were sounder process and just guys not executing. There was one run to the right, I think Gainwell on 3rd and 4, where Pete couldn't reach and wall off his backside D tackle, who was able to kind of come down backside and make the play there. So, some execution issues as well. But yeah, I just
There
felt like
was
this.
one with Johnny Smith that I put on my Twitter timeline that if I mean asking Johnny Smith to block Myles Garrett, is a tall task and you shouldn't ask for much results anyway. But I mean, if he does, at least do something on Myles Garrett, that has the opportunity of getting 5, 6, 7 yards down the field.
Yeah, that was Jonnu Smith trying to block Garrett backside, and as you said, that's going to be a real tough matchup there, and you really feel the loss of Darnell Washington in those moments. There were some front side plays, some tosses where it felt like he didn't do a good job on the front side, guys getting second level without securing first level. So, the run game could have been better, but that was how you're going to win this game because the
Right.
pass game was just going to give you nothing. I think I tweeted at halftime, if Pittsburgh's going to win this game, they must ride the run game to victory. I don't know if they did that quite to the level it was needed in this game. I know they got behind and it became late in the game. You had to throw a little bit there, but you weren't in many situations where you had to throw. End of the first half, and then that final drive, maybe the final 2 possessions of the game, you got the ball back 2:16 in the fourth quarter. That's a throw situation. You threw 4 straight incompletions, and of course the final drive. Everything else, your whole playbook was kind of open. The game script was not going to tell you had to just throw the ball. I think Pittsburgh could have done a better job sticking to the run. But I mean, again, there were moments where they did run the ball on the third to last drive. They ran the ball all 3 plays and they went 3 and out. So, there's a lot of issues here. I don't think it was just on a lack of play calling. There was certainly a lack of execution too.
And obviously, the Browns, once again, they just want to play middle of the field close and more times than not dedicate to stopping the run overall and kind of dare you to win your one-on-one situations with in coverage when you decide to pass. And they're once again the Steelers were outclassed as far as talent when it came to their eligibles versus the Browns defensive backs and sometimes linebackers in coverage.
Yeah, I mean, just the bottom line is you had no semblance of a pass game. You could not beat man coverage, and Cleveland stayed in that look and shut you down the whole way. And Pittsburgh will have to find a way to come up with better answers against Baltimore, who I assume is going to do a lot of the similar concepts in this one, with Pittsburgh being without DK Metcalf and very likely without Darnell Washington. It was frustrating with Pat Freiermuth making plays. Pittsburgh only seemed to find him at the end of the half and end of the game, end of the first half. You had that one cover two seam ball with 12 men on the field for 23 yards, big play there. You found him end of the game, 29 yards and 11 on the RPO the following play. How are those the only two moments where you find 88 on the field on an afternoon where your receivers aren't getting open, where you're down some of your top targets? How is Freiermuth not getting more looks?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's one I'm sure Mike Tomlin will be asked more in depth on Tuesday, and then obviously Arthur Smith later on in the week there. So, and you're right. You're moving into this final game now. Even though the Steelers, the first time they played Baltimore, they saw a lot of man coverage, were able to get in a rhythm and push the football down the field. How many of those were to DK Metcalf, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not obviously not going to have him. So if I'm Baltimore and I'm going into this game, I try to duplicate a lot of what Cleveland did. Play a lot of man, play a lot of middle of the field close. Yeah, we'll give up a couple of maybe to Pat Freiermuth in those situations there, but one for one, we're betting that Aaron Rodgers can't beat us in the same fashion down the field in man coverage, especially without DK Metcalf. So I'm if I'm their defensive coordinator Zach Orr, I'm not going to let Jalen Warren or Kenneth Gainwell beat me on the ground. I'm going to make Aaron Rodgers have to convert third downs and push the football down the field, and I'm going to bet that he can't do that with the personnel that he has out there in Adam Thielen, Scotty Miller, and Marquez Valdez-Scantling, because you're probably not going to have Darnell Washington. And look, even that you got to think, man, if we can force them, dare them, or if they lean heavily on their running game, not having Darnell Washington is a big component of what they do. And you lose one of your best end of the line, your best end of the line blocker in those situations.
You also lose a pusher because he's the main pusher in those situations. There was that one short yardage call, the 4th and 1 to Scotty Miller, where if you had Washington in the game, do you call the push there instead? Instead, you go empty set and chuck it deep. So I wonder if that influenced some of the play calling and situational moments that Pittsburgh had as well. But you're right, the lineup of Valdez-Scantling and Thielen and Scotty Miller, and you can even throw Roman Wilson in there, not scaring any secondary. And Baltimore has a pretty good secondary. First-round guy in Nate Wiggins. I know Marlon Humphrey is not the player that he once was, but still I think a capable and versatile corner. You have the Kyle Hamilton who can man up on tight ends and take away Freiermuth, probably going to be the goal for Baltimore in this one. You have Starks, I think a first-round pick too from this year's class. You traded for Gilman before the deadline. So you got a lot of guys in coverage that I'm sure Baltimore trusts to man up and win their one-on-ones. In Pittsburgh, who do you trust to make a play right now? Who do you devise your game plan around? The answers are pretty few and far between. It's really the running backs and Pat Freiermuth.
And once again, I hate to pound on this. At the very least, you got yourself in a game in a situation where you have 4 plays starting from the 10-yard line, and that's your game plan. You boy, everything's behind you at that point, as bad as you've played offensively, and you got it down to 4 shots starting at the 10 with your final 3 at the 7, and that's all you can do.
Yeah, and again, 2 of them weren't even competitive. They weren't even plays on the ball because of miscommunication, ostensibly between MVS and Aaron Rodgers. So you basically had your first down play, which was a little pick play, kind of slant flat, dragon concept to Thielen for 3. Then you had the 4th down, low percentage jump ball to MVS, all against Denzel Ward. Just a really bad sequence, there. So, whenever you have to dedicate so much attention to Myles Garrett, you typically only put 3 out in the pattern, which really, stresses you even more as an offense. It relies on these guys to win. It's hard to run some concepts off of that. But, yeah, you just don't have anyone that you trust to step up and win.
And if you're not given the help to Myles Garrett like they did in this game, he's getting 2 or 3 sacks in this
Yeah.
game, and potentially one takeaway there. So you obviously had to give the help that you gave on both sides with him, but you just once again you could not win the one-on-one type situations in the passing game enough, especially on critical downs on third down. For them to go 3 of look, that's a good defense, right?
Sure.
But to go 3 of what was it?
18 in total, 3 of 15
18.
on third down.
Yeah, 3 of 15 on third and 0 for 3 on fourth down. I mean, even against some of the better defenses, you've got to be a little bit better than that.
And even just examining the 3 failed down, fourth down moments, you had the 4th and 1 deep shot to Scotty Miller. You passed up the little rub to Thielen, which would have converted. So you're throwing a low percentage deep ball to Miller against Campbell. You have the 4th and 10 where that ball gets batted, and I went back and watched the all 22 because we never got a good look at it from the broadcaster from CBS, and it looked like miscommunication where Miller was running a dig, and I think Rodgers was going to throw that ball out like on the whole shot between this corner underneath and the safety over the top. So even if that ball was not batted, it's harmlessly incomplete or intercepted and probably returned for a touchdown. And then, of course, you had the 4th and goal, jump ball to Valdez-Scantling. So your 3 fourth down plays were, low percentage deep ball, a 4th and goal, low percentage jump ball, and miscommunication. And so you're just in these big time moments and you're just not even really putting yourself in great positions to even have a chance to make a play. Offensive line, Dave, what did you think about the offensive line, the guys up front?
I thought for what they were asked to do in the game plan, and obviously asked to give the attention to Myles Garrett, I thought as a whole the unit played good enough to win, especially if they had better eligibles to use in the passing game. I thought run blocking was pretty sound overall. Now look, once again, once you lost Darnell Washington, that was a big loss for obvious reasons there. But I was, and I haven't made it all the way through the all 22. I think I've made it to halftime on the offense there so far. But the offensive line played good enough to win that game.
Yeah, it's probably a fair assessment. I mean, obviously there was a lot of help to Garrett as there should be, but I thought Frazier did okay. I thought Anderson did fine. You got some good clips of Fautanu continuing to really look strong in pass protection. So yeah, I think it's probably a good summation of it to say the offensive line played well enough for you to win this game.
Right. I think Pete had a snafu that you'd probably like to have back. Obviously, Cook, the false start was hurt this team, as you highlighted earlier in the show there. But I thought pound for pound, if they had better receivers in this game, I thought the offensive line played good enough.
Yeah, we'll have to see the all-22 really be able to give a better window into that. I thought some of the run blocking could have been better on the perimeter. I think that's kind of one maybe critique, not just the offensive line, but the entire blocking apparatus. But maybe it's kind of one critique that I have watching the game live. All right, flipping over to the defense, unless you had more offensive thoughts, Dave. The defense got off to a poor start. Cleveland raced out to a 10-0 lead. You had an opening drive field goal for Cleveland, followed by that duck of a throw to Harold Fannin that he was able to find and come down with that Pittsburgh could not locate. But then after that, the defense completely tightened up. The Browns had 3 points the rest of the way, which came off that turnover on downs deep in Pittsburgh's territory, where they still got a final stop to give the offense one final chance to try to go down and tie the game. So you allow 13 points to the Browns, and that's kind of the bottom line in this one. I know the defense could sit there and say you want a couple plays back, and they should, but you allow 13 points. That should, quote unquote, should be enough to get you the win. Obviously, it wasn't, but 13 points is a good day for any defense.
Yeah, the first couple of series, obviously not great, even though it took a long 50-something yard field goal for the Browns to take a 3-0 lead there. Harold Fanning catch against Kyle Duggar, he never saw the ball. I mean, how many times does that either get broken up or intercepted in most games around the league in that same situation? He never found the ball, and kind of harken back to somewhat, I guess, similar to the play Gainwell made against the Lions and all like that. But no interference on that. He never found the ball, and boy, Ramsey couldn't believe it as he's coming up at the end of that play either there. So that was an unfortunate play by Duggar that resulted in a touchdown. But was it a fair trade-off? Because Fannin ended up leaving the game, re-aggravating his injury. And obviously he was a key component that you had to worry about shutting down, because the Steelers were fortunate enough that David Njoku obviously didn't play in this game. So you trade a poor play by your secondary, give up a touchdown, and they lose their, arguably their best, most productive player on offense in the process. I'm not going to say, fair trade-off or anything like that, but, you from that point forward, pretty much they played a lot better game. And then looked specifically in the second half. The Browns offense only ran 20 plays in the second half for 52 net yards. They were 1 of 5 on third downs. The Browns offense was in the second half, and they had just 2 first downs overall. They scored just 3 points, obviously, in the second half, and that was only after the ball was turned over on downs by the Steelers offense late in the game, and was automatically in field goal situations at that point there. So there were some runs that got away from them a couple times, but none of them really killed them. They made some key third down stops when they really needed them. You obviously, Duggar got Shadur Sanders threw up a duck that Duggar picked off. You had the ball bounce off of Logan Lee's helmet that Jack Sawyer took intercepted there. And then it's hard not to point at that one at Nick Herbig there. I mean,
Sure.
Sanders gives you a gift pick six, and unfortunately, I mean that very well. Look, this whole game doesn't come down to Nick Herbig lost the game, right? No.
No, but those are moments where you
yeah.
have to capitalize. We talked about you have to take advantage of the mistakes, and Pittsburgh did not do that fully.
Right. And I mean, if that's not a pick six, it's down deep in the Browns territory at that point there. But look, I mean, once again, you hold them to 20 plays for 52 net yards in the second half, and only 3 points because your offense went 4 and out deep. I mean, you got to take that. And then once again, you hold them to 13 points on the scoreboard. That should be enough to win a football game.
Yeah, as a team, just to go back to the overall point, your situational football was bad. 3 of 15 on third down, 0 of 3 on fourth down, 0 points off your 2 takeaways. Your sudden change moments there just were not good enough. You had the Jack Sawyer interception. You get the ball in the Browns 31. You go for it on fourth down. You don't get points there. You get the Kyle Duggar interception. You're at, I think, your 34-yard line. You don't get points there. Those are big moments where you need to really turn the tide, and Pittsburgh never did. And you couple that with the possession down situations where Pittsburgh was abysmal offensively and just kind of the really bad situational football. But, to your point, the defense was able to tighten up. I think the Browns had 135 yards of total offense after the first quarter, which is, essentially nothing. I think Shadur had $120 through the air early in the second quarter. He finished with 168. So the Browns offense did absolutely nothing after the first quarter. And that should be enough to go out there and win that game. The offense just has to not even play well, not even play good, just play a below average game. And the offense is able to put up 14 points, and Pittsburgh wins this game when the entire conversation is different come Monday morning. So it's hard to default to defense too much, but I do just recognize the lack of safety play and coverage. Chuck Clark getting beat for a 42-yard completion to Cedric Tillman early in that game. Duggar completely lost, unable to find the football on the Fannin touchdown. You had Jalen Ramsey having to play slot corner primarily in this game because of Brandon Echols' injury. Only he was able to play safety in base packages, and nickel he had to slide down to the slot. And so you really kind of felt you had 2 non-covered safeties in Duggar and Clark. I know that Duggar had the interception off the duck, and that was a good play, but you didn't have the horses there in coverage. And if you had Jalen Ramsey back there, those plays are different whenever he's in coverage.
Yeah, and a couple of those passes that Shadur completed against, I think, cover 2 most of the time in the situations, Shadur was able to extend the play, and the safeties just not be able to read and drive on the ball. And that's when you get those behind the second level guys running and catching the football. But they at least they settled down once again in the second half. And look, the defense is not the reason this team lost this game for sure.
Yeah, I mean, certainly was frustrating. Pittsburgh playing a lot of zone on third down early in this one, and Sanders made some good throws, some digs over the middle. Safety's unable to make plays in the football and separate player from ball. He had the one to Bond, I think 19 yards where he gets behind the underneath coverage, and it was a good throw by Sanders. So some of that was frustrating, but your defense did make stops. It did take the football away. On the Sawyer interception, I have not gone back to watch all 22 of that play yet. But yeah,
if he stays outside.
yeah,
But
why did
yeah,
he cut it back
I think that
inside?
offensive lineman had the angle on him. I
But he's
think
an
he,
offensive lineman.
yeah, I still think that he probably gets tackled there.
Do you think he
Looking at it,
gets more? Do you think he covers more ground and has a longer return if he stays down the sideline, or do you think
yeah,
it's the same if he
I
cuts
think.
it back?
Yeah, I think just momentum, in general, he probably gets 8, 9, probably more yards on
Yeah,
that. And yeah, maybe he does score there, but uh, I think he thought that his best shot was cut back in
yeah.
that offensive
A-
lineman on.
and it's hard to obviously fault too much for a guy in Sawyer's situation. Making he's not a running back, and it's not that mentality of what's the best angle is. But you do think about those plays, and of course you think about the Herbig drop pick six and moments you couldn't take advantage of. Either at all, really, or fully in the case of Sawyer, where maybe that run back could have been better. Reminds me remember, kind of reminds you, it tells you how slow a player thinks he is when he cuts it back. Remember Van Jefferson last year got open on like a 40-yard play and then just was wide, just running downfield, and then inexplicably stopped and cut back. And like that kind of reminds me of what Sawyer did there. Kind of reminds me. I'm pretty slow, so I'm gonna try to cut this one back because I don't think I have the speed to run straight down the sideline. But yeah, I mean, it's just your defense did enough in this game that made some big plays late. You were getting stops. I mean, again, your offense had the ball on 5 possessions in the fourth quarter, just needing a touchdown to take the lead, or in the case of that last drive, to tie. I mean, you gave your offense every single chance. I mean, the number of unborn children I've sacrificed to the football gods of saying, defense, just get one stop, give the offense one last drive. This will be the drive they make it happen. And they had every opportunity, and they did not in this game. So that's frustrating. Your defense did all that it could in big time moments to give your offense repeated opportunities to make plays, and the offense simply never responded.
I mean, the final 4 drives that they gave the offense to football, the Steelers started at their own 34 after the interception by Duggar. Then they started at their own 43, and then to get the football 2 more times like they did. First one with 2:16 left to have to go 80 yards. Obviously went 4 and out, and that offense went 4 and out. But to get the ball back with 140 left, even though you have no timeouts left and 65 yards to go, I mean, that's, after the turnover on downs, that ultimately ended in a field goal, you're thinking the game's over at that point. But for them to
Hmm.
get the football back with 140 left, almost felt like a gift.
Yeah, Cleveland went 3 and out on their final 4 possessions. I don't know when the last time Pittsburgh's defense has done that. I mean, it's probably been a minute. So your defense not only were getting stops, but getting them quickly. So your offense had a lot of time to be able to work with. It's not like Pittsburgh ever got the ball back with 8 seconds left in the game, and really you can't do anything with that opportunity. They were getting the ball back, and like I said, aside from those final 2 drives, the playbook was really wide open where you could run it, you could pass it. You weren't feeling like you had to do any certain thing in terms of just having to throw to move the ball down the field. So yeah, I mean, your defense, played well. Kim Hayward, Alex Highsmith continues to be on a heater, man. What a last month he's had. Run game, pass game coverage. He's doing it all. 2 sacks in this one of which led to that ball off Elise Helmet, picked off by Sawyer. He had 4 quarterback hits. He was drawing holding calls to bring back runs. I mean, he has just been on fire lately.
Yeah, I thought guys that really stuck out, Highsmith, Cam Hayward, I thought had a good game, and I thought Jalen Ramsey had some key tackles. One of them, I think, was on a Shadur Sanders scramble that he ended
Yeah.
up getting him just short of the chains, and then on a second down, and then the Browns tried to run it on third down and got thwarted there, so that ended up being a key tackle. And one of the other ones, Cam Hayward chasing, I think it was Shadur down the field for a high effort play as well there. So the 3 guys that really stuck out to me defensively were Highsmith, Hayward, and Jalen Ramsey.
Canada Queen made some plays, took away some of the screen game. I thought he was pretty active overall. So I'm with you in those thoughts. And that Hayward tackle came on, I think, third down, and then Cleveland went for it on fourth down, and Duggar did have decent coverage to force an incompletion, and Pittsburgh got the ball over on down. So Again, your defense did struggle early. I mean, there's no question about that. They came out pretty flat, and that's disappointing for how important this game was. But they made him, excuse me, so suppressing the cough here. They made enough plays here to certainly give the offense repeated chances to win this game.
All right, special teams, I guess, is next.
Yeah, I mean, Boswell, tough conditions, obviously, with how windy it was. You didn't get the rain that was called for. The rain kind of tapered off, I think, by about kickoff, but you had a lot of wind out there. And so Boswell, he probably had his best kick of the season on that. I think the 44-yarder, you had I don't know if it was a bad snap. It kind of felt like more of a drop snap by Waitman than it was a poor snap by Kuntz. But you had Boswell still be able to work that one from left to right and good. But you had the 154-yarder, which I had very little confidence in when they lined up, even as good as Boz is in that weather. I really did not expect him to make that one, but obviously all points were at a premium in this game.
Uh-huh. He just pushed that to the right,
Yeah, sorry. So working on the cough over here, hitting the cough button. Waitman wasn't spectacular, but all 5 of his punts inside the 20, that's pretty good business overall. That the Browns had a couple good field flipping punts, but Scotty Miller had a couple of solid runbacks too. So kind of washed out, and the net yardage wasn't too impactful for Cleveland in this game.
Boy, their punter did a fantastic job, didn't he, of flipping the field in a lot of situations. He had 4, averaged 57, the longest 64. Thought he was good. Obviously, the kicker made both of the field goals. One give me there at the end, and obviously made his extra point. So, other than and Miller gave him a good shot with his longest punt return of 25 yards later on in the game. Kick returns were okay, I guess. For the Jalen Warren got tripped up by the turf monster, I guess, on one of those around the 20-yard line. Just slipped and fell and didn't get anything on his one.
Yeah, Scotty Miller's return, by the way, 25 yards, was Pittsburgh's longest punt return of the season. So interesting there, or at least worth noting. But that was certainly reduced some of the great punt that the Browns punter had in this one. But yeah, probably not a lot of other notable notes here. I thought kick coverage continues to be strong. But yeah, you've had those operation issues. That's what, a couple games in a row where you've had some snap issues or hold issues on field goals, and that's typically just not been an issue. It's been a pretty good operation of Kuntz and Waitman and Boz. I think Kuntz has struggled this year. I think Waitman, again, probably maybe more to blame. I want to go back and watch it one more time on the one drop there, but you cannot have these operation issues late in the season like that.
Right.
All right, Dave, any other final thoughts in this game?
No. We'll get into the all 22. I don't know if we're going to learn all that much more than what we is already out there. Dan Orlovsky, like you, has broken down the final 4 plays of the game and pretty much came to the same conclusion. You at least you had an opportunity, 4 shots once again from the 10-yard line, and just very, very disappointing scheme execution from all the way around. And at least you can't say that you didn't at least have a shot late in this game to tie it and see what happens in overtime.
Yeah, you had repeated opportunities, not just one. 5 possessions in the fourth quarter is kind of what sticks with me to have 0 points. So just to reaffirm the playoff situation, Steelers Ravens Sunday night, 8:20 p.m. kickoff at Acrisure Stadium. Winner is the 4 seed. They will host the 5 seed, whoever that may be. Probably, I don't know, Buffalo, Chargers, or Texans are kind of the front runners, but that's still unclear who will be the 5 seed. But Pittsburgh or Baltimore will be the 4 seed hosting that game. The loser is eliminated and goes home. So it's a true winner-take-all matchup, Dave.
Yeah, this is a playoff game, and you get a Ravens team that once again rediscovered Derrick Henry in that game against the Packers, and Snoop Huntley did enough at quarterback. They look. I kind of look at this as they got a last second reprieve from a death sentence there by the Browns beating the Steelers, obviously. And not only that, it kind of feels like they got the case overturned at this point. You really got to be feeling good about, especially with what the Steelers not going to have DK Metcalf, probably not going to have Calvin Austin, unlikely to have Darnell Washington, and you know what they're going to try to do, what the Steelers are going to try to do offensively. And look, it feels like the Ravens got to be thinking that they're playing with house money at this point here. There's a reason there. It started off the line at 3 points with the Ravens being favored. I think it's moved to 3.5, them being favored now, and it's easy to understand why the Steelers get what they get at this point.
Yep.
What a difference. I tweeted this right after the game. I had the tweet ready to go too. You coming off of, arguably one of the best Mike Tomlin road wins of his career against on the road to Detroit against the Lions, to arguably one of the worst road losses that he's had during his career in Cleveland and against the Browns, and with a lot of stake on top of it there. So, look, you better figure out a way offensively to move the football down the field and score some points, and then defensively, you better get ready for a bunch of shame on the Ravens if they don't give the football, put the football in the belly of Derrick Henry 34, 35 times. Shame on them, regardless of who starts at quarterback. I know there's some early reports out there wondering of whether or not Lamar Jackson will play. I mean, does it really matter if the Steelers? You go back to that playoff game last year and the fallout from that, right? Well, we can't. We've got to draft. We got to be a team better against situations against a run game like that got us eliminated last year. Well, we're here. You are back in the same, basically the same situation, same opportunity. Do you have enough horses? Enough good defense left in you to limit Derrick Henry. And look, if the Steelers win this game, I expect it to be something like 16-13 or 13-6 or something like that. They're really going to have to put together a great game plan. They're going to have a great execution on offense, and then obviously they're going to have to control Derrick Henry on the other side there. And maybe I'll change by the time we get to Friday, but I don't have a lot. What optimism I had quickly went out the door yesterday.
Yeah, it's hard to blame you. I'm with you. I think most fans, I don't know a fan that feels particularly confident or optimistic right now. And you're right, Derrick Henry should be posting those high school numbers. That's what Todd Monken's mindset should be. You ever see the Derrick Henry high school production? He's got like 400 carries for the season, 35 carries a game. Like he get like crazy, almost criminal type stuff for, I don't know, 17-year-old back then. But that's the stat line that Henry should have in this game. If I could bring a little bit of optimism, though, Pittsburgh's run defense has been really good the last couple weeks. Completely shut down Detroit. They shut down Cleveland, granted a much easier opponent to shut down, but the run defense has made strides. It was okay against Miami. Again, Miami was mostly because they fell behind. They had to throw the ball. They had to abandon the running game, but you have seen this run defense improve. Eric Carmen, of course, is back and a big part of that. So that is maybe one thing you can try to hang your hat on and say Pittsburgh can continue that trend of stopping the run. Obviously, a much bigger task against Baltimore on Sunday. That's going to give you at least a chance to win the game.
Yeah, Baltimore's got to think that, look, we feel that the Steelers just aren't going to score a lot of points offensively. And because of that, we've got to continue to hammer Derrick Henry enough where it finally takes its toll and the dam breaks in the second half. That's got to be their game plan. Anything outside of that, then they get what they get in this game.
Yeah, and just watching the Ravens-Packers game casually, a lot of those toss plays, a lot of those kind of short toss perimeter runs where Henry was really making his hay on, and so Pittsburgh will have to defend that as well as they have all season. But, last year, Dave, Pittsburgh had a chance to beat Baltimore and win the division. They failed to as part of that losing streak collapse last year. This year, they have a chance to beat Baltimore and win the division. So these are moments that I think you sign up for if you're Pittsburgh because you control your destiny. You can beat Baltimore and send them packing and go to the playoffs, but obviously it's a lot of work to get to that point.
Absolutely, especially with the personnel that you have on the offensive side of football.
Yeah, that's the real concerning part. No DK, no Washington. You wonder who your go-to guys in these tight moments, who's going to step up and make plays, and it's just harder to find those guys. So if you're Pittsburgh, you talk about, Baltimore relying on their run game. Pittsburgh has to rely on its running backs. The problem is the Ravens have a good run defense. They really took away, Pittsburgh's run game in that first matchup. I think Pittsburgh had 34 yards rushing in that first game. He can't run the ball 34 yards with his cast of characters in the pass game and expect to win again.
No, Baltimore defensively should try to make Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers offense beat them again with explosive plays down the field and get them in, make the Steelers win on enough third downs. That's got to be their keep the yards to the catch to the minimum. If the Steelers are going to complete passes 6-7 yards down the field, tackle the catch real quick, and just dare Aaron Rodgers and the personnel that the Steelers have to win enough explosive plays through the passing game.
One other piece of optimism, if I dare bring it, Pittsburgh has only turned the ball over once in their last, 4 games. And so they have protected the football exceedingly well. Aaron Rodgers has not thrown an interception since the Chargers game in early November. And so if you do take care of the football, it does give yourself generally a chance to stay in ball games. Will you win them all? No, as yesterday proved, but Pittsburgh has they protected the ball while they had 3 fumbles yesterday. They probably should have turned the ball over once, so it wasn't a banner effort, but the stats are the stats. 1 turnover in 4 games is a good place for an offense in that very specific regard.
Not for a lack of trying to turn it over.
Yes.
Yeah. But
I'm scraping bottom of the barrel here, trying to bring something here to you guys, so we don't all drive off the cliff because we got 2 more shows to do here this weekend. All right, let's switch gears here to DK Metcalf. The story of Sunday before the ball kicked off at 1 p.m. was DK Metcalf and suspension upheld. A lot of discussion about the void of guaranteed money in his contract. Upwards of $45 million would be voided because of the suspension. It automatically triggers that in the contract. But according to Jay Glazer, the Steelers declined to void the guarantee. So Metcalf's guaranteed money will stay secured. How exactly that is being done, I don't know if that's a verbal thing. I don't know if that's reaffirmed in the contract or some sort of separate piece of paper because it's supposed to automatically trigger as part of the language in the contract. So I don't know exactly how this is being done, a handshake or formally. If you're the agent, you want this in writing for sure. But that is the report that Metcalf's guarantees will remain guarantees.
All right. I certainly do understand the Steelers side of it to at least, not totally. But look, we already said anyway that the odds of him not getting that money 2026 were, he was going to get that regardless anyway. The real detriment to potentially what he did was losing the injury guarantees in 2027. We have 2 sides. Obviously, we've had kind of mixed reports on this so far, and at some point I'll get Joel Corey either via direct message or get him on the podcast to dive a little bit deeper into what actually did happen or could happen, and get a little bit more definitive from an former agent point of view when it comes to that. And then there was the other Jay Glazer report about DK Metcalf too.
Yeah, Jay Glazer, who he's an insider, but he kind of has taken his foot off the pedal, doesn't necessarily give all the inside reports, but whenever he wants something, Jay Glazer's going to get it, and he got the security report, because remember, DK Metcalf reported that particular Lions fan to security last year as a member of the Seattle Seahawks when Seattle played in Detroit, and Glazer got his hands on that report that outlined the similar complaints that Metcalf accused the fan of making derogatory comments. The report said the security talked to fans that were around that fan in particular, and they corroborated and said the fan was saying, slurs and derogatory things towards Metcalf. Now, again, this is in 2024. This is not for the 2025 incident, but it certainly hurts the credibility of that fan when he says he did not make any derogatory comments to Metcalf in the Lions game in Week 16, given that he reportedly did a year ago. So that is the reporting there from Glazer getting his hands on that security report.
All right, that's all fine and good, but it doesn't change that they're not going to have DK Metcalf.
Yes.
And the fact of the matter still remains that DK Metcalf's got to show better control in that situation a week ago Sunday there, and not even put himself into a situation. That this is something that's after the fact that obviously needs to be investigated. I thought it was a joke of a press conference that Ryan Kennedy gave the other day, and obviously we'll have to see about the and here's the thing, if he's going after and wants DK Metcalf to apologize for things that he reportedly said, DK Metcalf has not come right out himself and obviously has not talked to the media since the incident. DK Metcalf saying that that the fan in Detroit used the N word and the C word and all like that. Those are reportedly secondhand information, I believe, offered up by Chad Johnson and James Harrison. And at that point, that's what hearsay. I think it's not like DK's on the record anywhere saying that himself. So good luck of trying to get anything financially. I don't know how much of an assault or whatever aspect of it. This obviously this will go on beyond the whatever happens the rest of the season with the Steelers on the field, which obviously could come to an end Sunday night against the Ravens, or however long they stick around in the playoffs should they indeed make it there. But this is all kind of stuff for another day, I guess, to talk about. And it doesn't change the here and the now. And the here and the now is that the Steelers still aren't they're not going to go back and say, oh, you know what? After the fact, we're going to let you play against Baltimore. At this point, they made their decision, and that's that at this point.
Yeah, you're right. It's spilt milk, but you made a really good point. I was going to bring it up if you hadn't. You kind of hear the rumblings of this fan suing DK Metcalf. That's not been official, but kind of reported and rumored. And Mike Florio certainly been diving headfirst in that speculation. But I don't know what liability Metcalf would have, considering he's not made a public statement at all about this
Right.
fan. He's not said anything publicly. I don't know if his statements privately to Chad Johnson and James Harrison constitute any sort of damages, because unless there was explicit intent of, hey, go say this on your shows, go tell them exactly what the fan said. Unless there's that, and even that, I don't know if that would breach some sort of cause or liability to Metcalf. I don't know what a lawsuit would accomplish, but of course you can sue and just make it an issue, and anyone can sue anybody over anything, I guess. So I we'll see. But for Pittsburgh, it's not relevant right now. On the guarantee side of things, it does feel a little ceremonial to not void out the guarantees, because as you said, they weren't going to cut Metcalf after this year, and the injury guarantee is just that. It's just for injuries. So it's important. We talked about that, last week, but it's probably not as grand a gesture as maybe some are taking it from Pittsburgh.
Right. And once again, after the dust clears a little bit more time, I'll see if Joe Corey has more specifics related to what actually could happen, did happen, or the Steelers have the right to do to happen, I guess.
Just your guess, and I know that, like you said, we'd have to talk to Joe Corey if the voids were declined. Would that be something done in writing? Would that just kind of be an understood, we're not going to pursue it? What do you think the process looks like?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I'm not even going to pretend to know exactly what has happened and what is needed for such a thing to happen. No, I mean, it'd just be a shot in the dark. I don't know.
All right, fair enough. Let me give you another hypothetical, and I don't want to put the cart before the horse. Pittsburgh come out there and win this game on Sunday night, but obviously you're not feeling great about the situation the Steelers are in right now. Which collapse would be worse? If Pittsburgh loses this game to Baltimore and, of course, become eliminated from the playoffs, or last year's collapse of losing the last four, making the playoffs, and then getting trounced by Baltimore in the wildcard game?
I mean, I don't think it really matters in the grand scheme, but I mean, you had what most deemed a ideal situation for a hat and t-shirt game against a rookie quarterback in Shadur Sanders, a team that did not have Njoku, a team that had Schlesinger was banged up about before right at halftime or thereabouts in there. You had an ideal situation. Your defense plays well enough where they hold them to 13 points overall. I mean, you just let a golden opportunity slip away in this situation where you definitely easily controlled your own destiny. You were setting yourself up to rest players in week 18 against Baltimore. I mean, we're talking recency bias here, but it certainly feels like this loss against Cleveland on Sunday is the worst of the two. But obviously, you're splitting hairs. In both situations, you look like you were heading to the playoffs, and you might not be.
Yeah, I think this year's would actually be worse, as painful as last year was, and their recency bias can come into play. But I feel like you had a better team this year. You had the quarterback. You felt like the AFC was open, and you just had to beat Cleveland. And that's certainly no gimme. I mean, we know the history. They've now lost their last 4 games in Cleveland, only won once in Cleveland since, I think, 2017, whatever the stat was. So it was not going to be an easy win. But I would have taken, obviously, the ugliest win possible and just get the win. I don't care how you do it against Cleveland. I don't care if you win by the skin of your teeth.
Or a
It doesn't,
tie,
or tie, yeah, just whatever it took. It was not going to be an easy game. That's why I predicted a 17-13 Steelers win, like low scoring, ugly. That was my expectation of how this game would go, but I didn't care how you got there. Just get the win. You can rest. And what a difference that would have been to win this game, to rest your starters, to get healthy. And now you're in this dogfight. And by the way, Baltimore now has an extra day to prepare. They play on Saturday, so they have an extra rest day in there, an extra day to watch and get ready and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of advantages there for Baltimore. It just, this one would be, not that you were assuming Pittsburgh would make the playoffs, but it was right there for the taking. Such a great opportunity, and to really blow it if you by losing to Cleveland, and if you lose to Baltimore. Man, what a gut punch when you were sitting there 2 weeks ago saying, man, this team has a chance to maybe win a couple games and be in this thing, and how wide open the AFC was. That now is feeling like it's going right through your fingertips.
You could very now well be facing a situation with the clock ticking down at Acrisure Stadium on the wrong side of the scoreboard, where the 2025 season comes to close for the Steelers, with the fans once again screaming at the top of their lungs, "Fire Tomlin!" And that's how you ride off into the offseason.
That's a fantastic point. That could be the defining moment and image and sounds of your season. If you don't win this game, it will end in boos. It will end in fire Tomlin. It will end in a very sad walk back to the tunnel from Tomlin and Hayward and Rodgers, and a lot of questions about the future. I still think Tomlin, again, carts before horse. I think Tomlin still returns, really, regardless of what happens in this Ravens game, even if they lose. I know fans will hate that, but I think he's going to come back. I've kind of maintained that for a while now, even during the Bills game and kind of the low point of the season. But yeah, what an image it would be if that's how the season ends.
All right, a couple emails here to close it out.
Yeah, let's get some emails and close out today's show. No live stream today. That's just part of our normal schedule. So we'll have one next Monday, and it'll either be a great live stream or another miserable one. So we'll see which way that goes.
All right, this one from Matt Palmer about the play clock reset on a Browns punt. He says, after the defense stuffed Raheem Sanders on a third down to force the 4th and 1, the Browns punt team set up and then seemed like the play clock reset very late, which allowed them to run more time off. Do you know the reasoning for this late play clock reset that allowed them to bum more clock? I have not even looked at that, and that was not even on my radar, but I will try to look at that between now and Wednesday. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I'm sorry, what was the play again? Can you reference the situation?
The play after they stuffed Raheem Sanders on third down to force a 4th and 1. I imagine that was after the Sanders scramble, right? The Browns punt team set up and then seemed like the play clock reset very late.
I'm going to try to look here if I can for you guys. Yeah, I'm seeing it go down to 10, and then it goes back to 25. Now I know they do talk about, pumping up the clock. We kind of sometimes see like an old school reference, erase the roof, like somebody doing that motion that's pumping up the play clock. So I don't know what the reason was for that. So yeah, I'm seeing it come down. Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know what the reason was, but I mean, it's not uncommon to see the play clock get pumped back up to 25. So it doesn't necessarily alarm me, but it is certainly some critical time that the Browns could waste.
All right, Nathan Casey writes in about the MVS infatuation and Roman wonderings. He says, how many times was MVS not doing what A-Rod expected? After probably the second or third time, I would not be going back to him. He says 3 out of 4 red zone must-have plays to make the playoffs. Seems bananas when he had been so out of sync all day. Why were they forcing him the ball when Muth was on fire? Also, if Roman Wilson can't get targets when the number 1 receiver is out and almost anybody is getting separation and nobody is getting separation, this season is lost. For him is lost, he says. Couple that with Caleb Johnson being inactive, and it makes you wonder why Tomlin can't get more out of these young skill guys. Can you explain why Roman is now the run blocking wide receiver and gets no targets, especially this week. Will it change next week? Should it? Well, we already had a lot of conversation about a lot of this, Nathan, so I don't want to rehash a lot of it. But yeah, I mean, look, they just don't have the confidence in Roman Wilson to getting more snaps. Caleb Johnson, that was a numbers game once again for him being inactive. And we talked about them going to MVS the final 3 plays the way that they did, and how 2 of those were essentially wasted plays because Aaron Rodgers and MVS weren't on the same page. And even if they were on the same page, would those have been touchdowns?
Sure. Yeah, they weren't exactly high percentage opportunities there. Yeah, I mean, with Rodgers' mentality, it's not a wrong one. Is he's going to throw to the open guy. He's not going to go away from somebody who's open, even if they're struggling. And I can appreciate that mentality. But if you're the coaching staff, you sit there and say, we just can't get this guy, take this guy out of the lineup and let Roman go in and, I don't know, do something different. Because, yeah, MVS really did not play. I mean, none of the receivers played particularly well, but I think MVS was the worst of the wide receivers yesterday. So, yeah, I don't get it. Again, you just hear Tomlin talk all week about great chance for Roman Wilson and 9 snaps. And how many routes did he run? As the reader said, there was probably some run blocking in there. So let's call it 5 routes in this game. I can't make sense of that, Dave.
All right. And look, they better do something different. They better try to see what they have and see if he can maybe spark some things in the passing game against Baltimore. We'll definitely see. Luke Weaver. Here's the thing, though, is if I don't know, you still might come down to numbers where he gets a hat because they
Well, Calvin suit up.
If Calvin suits up, does that mean Roman doesn't get a helmet? Well, we'll have to see. Luke Weaver writes in, second and pass. Did you notice the Steelers seemed to line up with an empty backfield far too frequently on second down? This was all game long as if it was part of the game plan. He says when Tom finishes the charting, can you see if that stands out? What's the point of having 2 great running backs if you're going to guarantee a pass play every second down? When the defense stops you, essentially guarantee another pass play on third down. He says too predictable. He says onward to what was always going to be the final showdown against Baltimore. Look, a lot of times Kenneth Gainwell's put on the side with Myles Garrett to provide help when a tight end's not used. So that played a big part in why you saw a lot of empty, specifically on second down. I don't have the breakdowns yet of how many times they went empty on second down. We'll get that with Tom's charting and as we go through with a fine-tooth comb on the all 22. But the week before too, I think I said something around 50%. They ran out of empty.
Yeah, that's not an uncommon set to go empty when you have those chippers like that. I think that's a lot of teams will do that and give that look. I know it's certainly guarantees pass, but it is kind of, because typically you don't want that back chipping out of the backfield. It's harder to kind of get a good clean chip on the guy if he's got to release out of the backfield, and Garrett's kind of got a head start there. So I get what Pittsburgh was doing. Could they have done some different things, though? Could they put the tight end to that side and had Gainwell in the backfield and not chipped on both sides? I still think there could have been certainly ways to still take care of Garrett without kind of hamstringing Gainwell to that degree and going empty to that degree, too. So I think there's some validity that Pittsburgh could have done more than just kind of, because basically their whole plan was just go empty, dual chippers, have Gainwell chip Garrett. That was, or the tight end occasionally do it too, from his wide alignment. I think there probably could have been a little bit more there.
All right. Chris Lookhart has basically a statement. He says, being honest, boys, I want us to lose to the Ravens and Tomlin be fired. He says DK being suspended is part of Tomlin being more buddy instead of discipline. He says, add on to the fact Tomlin loses games we should win. He says, I'm done. Hit the factory reset. So Chris Lookhart's made his thoughts known there. Jason Chadwell, this is exactly what I was afraid of was going to happen. Regardless, it all comes down to week 18. He says, questions. How come Rodgers knows when to hurry to take the next snap, but the OC Arthur Smith cannot figure it out and tries to sub out players? Rodgers seems to be pissed off about it every week. For the love of all things, why do they choose to run on third and mediums? 0 for 2 again this week, he says. Lastly, what's your confidence level going into this winner-take-all showdown to start the week? I'll answer the last one first. My confidence level is not very high in this winner-take-all game against the Ravens at Acrisure. We talked quite a bit about, I think Aaron probably checked out a couple of those third and mediums runs, and Aaron Rodgers hurrying to take the next snap, but Arthur Smith can't figure it out. I mean, look, I think Aaron sees the field, knows the situations, knows when to hurry up, and wants to get the next play run. I'm less concerned about those kind of things, even though it has cost them a couple times and got some replays done. To me, that's the least of the problems going into this finale right now. The biggest concern I have is just the quality of eligibles that this team is going to trot out there in this finale, and did trot out there for the game against the Browns.
You're right, that's the big picture issue, but sometimes these things in the margins is what you have to win whenever you don't have a great roster out there. You can't have a poor roster and these potential miscues of trying to sub that takes away plays, and led to the Darnell Washington fumble last week. And I think that one play in question, MBS did catch the ball. It's close. I think it would have stood upon any sort of further scrutiny, but it's a concern. I think it is. It's a valid point. Why are the coaches not understanding the moment and the situation and what's happening and acting accordingly? And it did hurt them against Detroit with that time to look at the Darnell play that resulted in a turnover. So yeah, I think it's a certainly valid point of frustration.
All right, Dylan Bayer writes in, when Kimberly Martin tweeted the Steelers locker room was playing Take Over Your Trap pregame, the outcome in Cleveland felt decided to me, even though they had yet to take the field. He says this has been a pattern for years. When a team treats preparation casually, they lose, whether it's Mike Mitchell yelling into the Jaguars locker room years ago or telling the Browns you're taking over before even taking a snap. The behavior doesn't change, and neither does the outcome. Next week, we'll likely follow the same script, and with Harbaugh likely lean on Derrick Henry as he did Saturday, there is no reason to expect the Steelers to stop him. He says, I know Tomlin will never be fired, so I'll continue to enjoy watching him embarrass himself publicly and keep repeating the same mistakes.
Yeah, I don't mind having confidence coming into that game. I mean, I don't take issue with that point in particular. I mean, some may argue like the reader is that's kind of getting ahead of yourself there, but I'm okay with the confidence. Pittsburgh could have won this game. They should have won this game. It just it's on them.
All right, Will Fernandez from New Jersey. Loved the show, longtime listener. All game long, offensively, it appeared that the game plan was not to let Myles Garrett break the sack record against the Steelers. From the plays called to how Rodgers rushed a lot of his throws showed this philosophy. Post-game, even Myles Garrett said that they were more worried about keeping me away from Aaron than getting the win. After viewing the TV tape, do you agree with that assessment? We addressed that right out of the chute in this show. Will, look, and look, once again, Mike Tomlin told you what the game plan was going to be in this. And also, as we've seen throughout the season, the Steelers, what they do on offense has been try to get Aaron Rodgers with the football out of his hands. Even though this was the fourth, it wasn't the quickest snap to throw time that Aaron Rodgers has had this season. But look, it wasn't. If Myles Garrett had been 8 sacks away from breaking the sack record, the game plan was still going to be what it was in this game. The sack record, in my opinion, it made for a talking point because he's on the cusp of breaking the sack record there. And you had all the comments, yeah, we don't want him to break it against us, and why should you? But here's the thing, once again, if Myles Garrett needed 9 or 7 or 5 or whatever, the game plan was still going to be to chip him quite a bit. You give Dylan Cook and Fautanu plenty of help with a running back or a tight end, and then get the ball out quick. And that's exactly what they did. And I take Myles Garrett's post-game comments, they worried more about keeping me away from Aaron than getting the win, is just more sour grapes than
not even that. I think it's twisting the knife. You just get a chance to celebrate that, especially when you don't get the record. Then you can kind of talk about that. But you're right, and we know that we don't even have to have conjecture about would this had been Pittsburgh's plan if Garrett wasn't close to the record? Because you go back and watch Week 6. I'm going to go back and watch it again, probably write about it for the morning, but I can promise you it's going to be the very similar game plan. I had a video on that. It was a video on how Pittsburgh shut down Myles Garrett. I had a big thumbnail of a box around Garrett that said invisible. Garrett had no sacks in that game, had no quarterback hits in that game. I promise you, you're doing, very similar things in Week 6 that you did in Week 17. If Garrett had broken the sack record before that game, Pittsburgh would have the same game plan in this one, because that's the one guy that can't wreck and take over the game. When Tom was asked about, why do you guys have such a hard time winning in Cleveland, his first answer was Myles Garrett, and pointed to, I think he's got like 5 sacks in the last, 2 games in Cleveland prior to yesterday. Garrett was wrecking some of those games. So it's just every opposing offense starts their game plan on how do we stop 95? How do we slow him down? And most teams do very similar things, and Pittsburgh did what they've always done. So it was not to prevent him from getting the sack record. It was just to prevent him from getting sacks, which in turn increases the Browns' chances of winning football games.
If you go back from the TV tape I rewatched last night and what I've watched also this morning, there were just not a lot of wins by the eligibles out down the field, period, in this game.
Yeah. And that's harder because, again, when you only have 3 out in the pattern, you have these chippers, then it's harder to have good route concepts and route combinations. You need those guys to win their one-on-ones, and Pittsburgh just does not have the horses. Now, to the broader point, and I'm making this a longer comment than it probably needs to be, why has Pittsburgh struggled to add some of these talented eligibles? And why is it always an issue of, we have one good receiver and kind of nobody else? And that's certainly something that reflects poorly on Tomlin, Omar Khan, and Andy Weidel.
And we have seen this team throughout the season win games where Aaron gets the ball out quick once again and ends up with an average intended air yard distance of under 5, or an average completed air distance under 5, and then they get the yards after the catch. That's the other aspect of this, is not only were they not able to push the football down the field against the Browns in the completions that they did have, they weren't getting the yak. And this Steelers offense needs one of those two things, and that's either pushing the football down the field to get the chunk plays or having a healthy yards after the catch. And they had neither of those in this game. And that's the long and short of it. And then specifically, you're miserable on 3rd and 4th down like they were in this game, and then you still get this game, as bad as it was, down to a 4-play sequence, and it was a feeble, bad scheme, bad execution. It was everybody associated with the offense and coaching staff gets that laid on them for the final 4 plays.
Let me ask you one more hypothetical. If Pittsburgh does tie the game there, let's assume they don't go for 2.
You got to kick the extra point there. You absolutely have to kick the extra point.
I agree. That was not my question. My question is, does Pittsburgh win that game in overtime, assuming it goes to OT?
I think they do.
I'm very confident they do, which is a crazy thing to say after losing that game, but the Browns offense was doing nothing at that point. They lost Fannin. I mean, again, they'd gone 4 and out or 3 and out on their last 4 possessions. Pittsburgh
at worst, they tie it.
Yeah, maybe it's just a punt fest for the last 10 minutes of overtime. But you would have taken that because a tie would have clinched the division as well. But I think if Pittsburgh is somehow able to find the end zone there, Pittsburgh wins that game.
Yeah, I let my mind go to the extra point there when they had 4 when they started their 4 attempts down 4 plays at the 10 there, saying, man, I sure hope because I think Romo said, oh, will they go for 2, Jim? I said, no, you got to kick the extra point. You got to take the more surest of the things in that situation, because a tie is just as good. Plus, they didn't have Fannin. The Browns had not moved the ball. You got to play for the tie and then hopefully get the win in overtime. Had for some reason they messed up and scored.
and I agree. And by the way, the broadcast, man, was really rough. I mean, it was just Myles Garrett. It was as if it was Myles Garrett and a bunch of other dudes that didn't matter. Like, the entire broadcast was just, here's Myles Garrett. Look at Myles Garrett. Could he get the record? Look where he's at. And Jim Nantz actually almost called the sack record incorrectly when Alex Wright had the sack instead of Garrett. So that was pretty, I get it's a very big occasion. It's a historic season for Garrett, but man, just call the game. And if Garrett gets the record, then he gets the record. That's fine. You can have a moment to celebrate and call that. But what a terrible broadcast.
All right, let's get out of here. We'll be back on Wednesday after watching the All 22, and obviously we'll cover the Mike Tomlin press conference that's going to happen Tuesday on the Wednesday show. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button and follow the directions that way to get a username and password to take advantage of the ad-free version. So within all that, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.